Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, episode number 35. Can you believe we made it to episode number 35?
I can't. It's kind of crazy.
Well, you should believe it or else you'll have some sort of cognitive dissonance with what you're currently doing because we are recording episode 35.
All right. For those of you who have not listened to us before, I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts.
Yes. Today we're talking about trip planning.
Yeah. So obviously we're pretty interested in travel. We have a travel podcast.
Is that what this is?
Is that what we're doing here?
Okay.
And trip planning is such a huge part of travel. I mean, you obviously have to figure out where you want to go to get on that plane. So,
yes, you really cracked that case.
I did.
Wide open.
Well, I mean, unless you're that person who just goes to the airport with the bag on your back and says flight to the next, whatever plane's leaving next. And in that case, we want you on the show. So email us at
I've never actually met anyone
worldwanderspodcast@gmail.com.
who's actually done that.
No, me either. I have a friend it's on her bucket list though.
So the genesis of this podcast is that we were both planning some trips, smaller trips, like 1 month trips. And then I've said the word trips a lot. And then we went from like having ideas to having millions of ideas, not millions, but like 10, and then back. I've narrowed in. You still have yet to narrow in on your final destination.
Yeah. So Ryan and I have traveled, like I just said, probably a minute ago, 12 months in total together, but we've actually haven't really traveled much apart. So one of the goals we sort of set for 2015 was to do trips on our own and sort of branch out and get that travel experience as independence as opposed to...
But that's not really, it wasn't like a goal we set. It kind of came about.
It's all my goals at work.
Okay. Amanda had a goal to travel by herself. I hadn't really thought about it. And then when you were going through your planning, I was like, oh, maybe it'd be good for me to go on a trip by myself as well.
So you're a lot further along in the planning stages. So do you want to kind of talk about the genesis of yours? It was interesting being on sort of my side of it and just kind of hearing you talk through your ideas because it seemed to change so much.
Yeah, I'll talk about my experience. So the genesis of my trip was actually, it was a couple days when Amanda was away and we lived together. And I noticed myself kind of feeling maybe a bit like nervous about being alone. And it made me think about how I wasn't as comfortable with just being alone as I maybe thought I was. We've talked a bit about this podcast about how traveling is really beneficial for building trust in yourself. And I've definitely thought that traveling by yourself would be an amazing way to build a lot of confidence in yourself, to just handle whatever challenges that might come your way. But I've never traveled by myself. So I think having someone or having Amanda with me has always been a little bit of a crutch. Not in like it's been nice, obviously, but it still hasn't been like as risky because I haven't been alone. So I was like, oh, I should go somewhere by myself. So I had the initial idea was like, oh, I'll go to Prague and try to learn Czech for a month. And then once I kind of committed to the idea of going somewhere, of leaving work and going to travel for a month, then I kind of started... that one idea that I had kind of was like, oh, if I have this month, I'm going to go traveling. Maybe there's all these other things I need to consider. Like, it's going to be cold here. Maybe I should go somewhere warm. If I'm going to Europe, maybe I should go to like some other countries. And if I'm, just thoughts like that. So it went from me considering Prague to me considering traveling from like Prague to Croatia, traveling around Eastern Europe, maybe just going to Spain, maybe learning spending a month in like rural Spain. Maybe I was like, oh, I could do Spanish and it'd be cheaper in Central America.
Yeah, I think we even talked about like, oh, maybe I'll go back to Peru. Like I really loved Peru. Maybe I'll just go back there.
Yeah.
It kind of went through, it was almost like during the planning process for you, from my perspective, it was every day it was like, oh, well now I'm thinking about this. And I felt really confused being on my end. And like, well, I thought you wanted to go to Prague. Like, isn't that kind of like what sparked this entire idea and what was kind of the driving force behind you wanting to go? And I was like, what do you mean you're going to go to Spain now? Like, you've already been to Spain, go somewhere new. And then it's like, well, if I'm going to Czech Republic, maybe I should go to more than one new place and tick off all these other countries. And I feel like it's a really common thought process.
Yeah, because I think for me, the initial factor was just wanting to go somewhere. It wasn't like this defined, I want to go here. It's like, oh, I want to go somewhere where it'd be a good place. And then, so what I'm really looking for is a month where I go somewhere new. It's like a little bit, not like dangerous, but like it's a place I'm not completely comfortable in. So like somewhere where there's foreign language and I can work on learning the language.
Different culture, foreign currency.
Somewhere where it's maybe not as expensive was a big thing. So that's probably something that drove me from thinking about Prague to all these other places like Central America and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so something that I've kind of been planning as well is I've been thinking about taking a 1-month trip to go and do yoga teacher training. And so I kind of got that idea in my head, and then I started doing research on different places. And so I've looked everywhere, like Central America, not everywhere, but Central America, South America, India, like Indonesia and kind of Southeast Asia. And it's just every time I feel like I've sort of settled on, I'm like, okay, this is the place. Then I'm like, maybe it's not the place. And then I like look up more stuff, and it's just, you know, at least you now have a flight book, so you've committed to something. I'm still kind of in that non-committal phase. And it's so interesting because I felt so confused about your indecisiveness when you were talking to me. And yet I'm going through the exact same thing. And it's like, I keep just going in these circles. Like I reread these programs, and then like I recheck flights and I check the dates, and then I do the whole thing all over again with all these different companies.
Yeah, I think there's like for me, and I think for everyone going through a similar thing, there's a couple things going on where, like for me, I was definitely looking for like the perfect situation. And the reality is there's a ton of options that will meet my needs, that will put me in a good position to do what I wanted to do and get what I wanted out of the trip. So much about traveling is just the unexpected, opening yourself up to chance and just realizing that, you know, chance is pretty good. That's kind of confusing, but like, you don't have to have control over everything in your life. If you open up and let control go, you realize that like, hey, this not having control thing, it actually works pretty well. Good things come to me. I have fun opportunities appear. I don't have to have everything planned. So that's a big part about traveling, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And you can get that anywhere. So there's tons of options that are good enough. That perfect option doesn't really exist. Maybe exists for like one person, but it seems like most people, you can't find it. So when I'm looking at these things, there's pros and cons, but I'm like almost viewing it as like, oh, any con is like unacceptable. I've got to find all pro situation. Yeah,
I think that's sort of where I'm at as well. It's like, I keep looking at things and being like, well, I don't really love this about this. Like maybe there's somewhere where this is better. And then it's like, maybe that's better somewhere else, but then I don't love something else about something. And it's sort of a difficult situation. And I think for me, some of the driving factor, I think, is fear to commit. And I'm sort of almost searching for somebody to validate what I'm looking for. Like, oh yeah, you should go there. Like that place is great. Mm-hmm. When it's really, you know, people aren't going to do that. They're like, oh, cool. Like if that's what you're wanting to do, like that's awesome. Whereas like I'm seeking this approval from other people.
Because there's a bit of risk involved when you've got, like, it's an opportunity to go do something that you're maybe not going to have again for a while. Like when we went on a big trip, I found it a bit easier because it's like you've got a long period of time. You can go to a bunch of places. Whereas for both of us, I think we're looking at 1-month trips, taking breaks from work. So it's kind of like this opportunity that you don't want to screw up.
Yeah.
So you're afraid that, like, if you ask someone and someone recommends you somewhere and you go, there's some level of responsibility that you can take off yourself and put on those other people to say, like, this wasn't all me. And you don't have to deal with the fact that, like, oh, maybe I went somewhere and maybe it sucked and maybe I could have used this opportunity in a different way.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly it. I feel like that really resonates with me in terms of sort of my decision-making process. And it's sort of interesting. I've talked to people that I work with and other people who travel sort of about how they make their decisions. And I've thought about how I've made my decisions in the past. And I think a lot of time it's really been dictated on something specific that I've wanted to do or see in a certain place. For example, the first time I went to South America to visit a friend, it was, oh, do you want to come down and visit me in Peru or Bolivia? And I was like, yeah, for sure. I'd really love to see Machu Picchu. So it's like Machu Picchu was sort of my driving force there. And I was like, I don't really mind what else we do, but I want to see Machu Picchu. And it's sort of like, oh, I want to go here because I want to see this. I want to do this because I want to cross this off my bucket list. And with this 1 month trip, it is more, what's the word I'm searching for? It's more condensed. It's shorter. There is more sort of risk involved, I feel like, because I'm committing to 1 month in one place and I don't want to make the wrong decision.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a bit more about the idea for your trip, what you wanted, what maybe changed? Because initially, like, you want to do yoga teacher training, but just talk more about why.
Why? Yeah. So I've started practicing yoga, I guess, like almost 8 years now, 8 years ago. I'm not amazing by any means, but I started practicing it as a form of exercise. And then the more I did it, it became more of like a mindful thing for me. So it was kind of that escape from my day to day. And then the more I practiced, I was like, oh, I actually really love doing this. I felt like it was something that I could see improvements in. And then I was like, oh, I think I'd love to go down the path of having that journey to become a yoga teacher. I haven't set intentions or goals in terms of what that looks like after, but I think that journey is really what I'm looking for, going on that like individual trip and learning about myself and learning something new. I found when we traveled in South America, learning Spanish was so fulfilling for me. I was like, oh, I want to travel and do something that's going to be really fulfilling, that I'm going to get a lot of like personal growth out of. And so that's sort of where the yoga teacher training path came from. And
it was more like you were really wanted to go out somewhere by yourself and get a feeling of independence and build some trust in yourself. And then yoga teacher training was like a good way to have that adventure, right?
Yeah, and to have that adventure while still having sort of that structure and not just being like, okay, I booked a flight to Nicaragua and I'm going to travel around for a month by myself. The idea of that was a little bit more scary to me. And I was like, oh, I think it'd be good to go and have sort of this integrated program where I can really get like comfortable just being alone, but being with a group of people for that period of time. And I've kind of gone through so many, like I said before, so many different places. It really started, I was like, oh, India. Like India is the home of yoga. Like that's the obvious place to go.
And it was like exciting to you as a challenge, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like India is definitely, I think it's so much more extreme than anywhere I've been. And I love that sort of travel challenge. Like I love going somewhere and having to work for like to get your food or to get somewhere. And then the more I researched it, I was like, oh, I'm actually really scared of that idea of doing that by myself, which I think it's really great to scare yourself. And part of the reason why I didn't want to go somewhere like Central America or, Bali was I felt like it'd been really done. Like I felt like it was super cliche. And then the more
can you explain that?
Like, I just feel like I've talked to so many people who are like, oh yeah, I did my yoga teacher training in Bali. And because I've traveled so much, I had sort of this sense within me, like I was a better traveler than doing that.
So part of you wanted to go somewhere that other people would think of as exotic?
Yeah. And then I realized that, doing this trip isn't for other people. It's not about other people. It's about myself. And India still is on my radar as somewhere that I 100% want to travel India at some point. I'm just not sure if it's, this year by myself. So perhaps that's a different journey. I've opened the doors up to Bali and Central America as possibilities. Just because I was like, oh, it doesn't really matter if other people have done it. Like, my trip will be different than anybody else's because it's mine. And it's what you make of it. It doesn't matter if other people have been there. It's about what I'm doing for me.
So your initial vision was going to India, having this exotic, scary experience, coming back a month later with a lot more like self-esteem, trust, yoga skills.
Yeah, for sure. Although I think that I can get that anywhere that I go. I think it's more about taking that trip on my own. I think I could go to California and do it and get a good experience out of it.
But so that's something that seems to be because you've gotten more involved in like a yoga community, talking to people who have done yoga teacher training specifically for yoga. Because if you go on a trip to do yoga teacher training, you can have a wide range of things you're looking for and trying to accomplish, right? You can go for yoga teacher training to become better at yoga. You can go for yoga teacher training because you want to teach yoga. You can go for yoga teacher training because it's this, you'd find it fulfilling to learn a little skill, but it's also like a bit of structure on a trip, right? You can, it can be a part or like a means to a number of different ends. So when you're talking to people who have used it, the same means, but maybe for different ends, you found it a bit hard, right?
Yeah, I think it's, everybody has their opinion. And I think when you go somewhere and you have a really great experience, you're really biased towards that place or that company. And I know that for example, if somebody's like, oh, I'm going to South America, I've heard Colombia is like pretty sketchy, I'm not going to go there. I'm really biased towards saying, Colombia is not sketchy. Like, Bolivia is way, way more dangerous than Colombia. Like, you have to go to Colombia because it's amazing, because I had this great experience there. And I think that it's just, people put their opinions on you or give you their opinions. And then it's really hard because it's like absorbing all these different opinions. Like, you talk to somebody or I've talked to people who have done yoga teacher training in Bali, and they're like, you have to go to this place. You have to do it with this company. They were so amazing. I had the best time. And then it's like, no, India. It's like, oh, India is actually pretty sketchy. Maybe you should go to Central America. A lot of people as well with yoga teacher training are very much like, find a teacher that you are really passionate about in your community and just do it with them. Like, you don't need to go somewhere to do it, which is 100% true. Although for me, it's so much more than just the yoga teacher training. It's about embarking on this journey by myself and learning something while I'm doing it. So for me, it is about going on that trip. That's what's really important for me. That's something that I value.
So, but when you've been talking to other people, it's kind of made you a bit less certain.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to be like, oh, well, I found this company. And it's like, okay, well, before you book, maybe you should just look into this one. Like, I've heard this one's really good. And it's just like, oh man, it's been a bit stressful for me. Have you found that at all, talking about your trip with people? That they're like, oh, you should go here or do this? Or
I think it's different because I think when people go to do something like yoga teacher training, they become more invested in it.
Yeah.
And it's not like as structured. And so I've been talking to people, but not many people who have been to that area, other than one guy I work with who's from the Czech Republic. But the part that I can identify with you with is some ideas that are in my head that aren't really focused on what I want and are more focused on what other people should do. So in planning for this podcast, I was writing down some of the thoughts that were in my head that kind of made me expand and consider other options. And I was writing them down like, I shouldn't go somewhere I've been. I should go somewhere Spanish because I've spent so much time learning Spanish. Should go somewhere that speaks Spanish.
Yeah.
It's cold here in Canada. I should go somewhere warm. I should see as many countries as I can because I've already bought this flight over there. And like I noticed when I was writing that, they have like this should idea in all of them, like things I should do, which I think comes from like in me, not what I want. It's just this idea of like, oh, if you're traveling, there are things that you should be doing. Like the idea of going to as many countries as possible is alluring, because I think as humans, we have this urge to like keep track of things and count things. So in a way, like in your mind, you can say that, oh, if I go on this trip, go to 7 countries, that's somehow better than just going to one country, because like 7's more than 1. So obviously it's better. But like the idea of countries is like a little bit ridiculous in the first place.
Yeah.
And then counting countries, because like there are the things you can count. Like why don't you count like territories, towns, cities? It's just kind of arbitrary, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good point, because there's so much stuff about sort of like your value as a human being based on numerical things, like when you kind of delve into this travel world and then you meet other people who travel, it does become about like how many countries you've been to. And it's like, I know there's quizzes and stuff on Facebook that you can do. And I feel like it's the people that I've met traveling who are big travelers who do them. And I can't help it when they have, I've been to 41 countries, which is a ton. But when they have more, I'm like, I got to go to more countries. I got to get up there. Like I'm an experienced traveler. Like I need to be up there with them. It's this like internal pull, and it's like almost a hit to my self-esteem. It's like, no, but I've traveled so much. I need to see more. I think it's really important to keep in mind that, I count Belgium as somewhere that we've been, yet we were in Brussels for only a number of hours and we had a very small experience there. So it's like, have I been to Belgium? Yes, technically I have been to Belgium. I've eaten chocolate there. I've experienced a little small amount of Brussels, but have I truly been to Belgium? Like I haven't traveled Belgium. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in just ticking these things off and scratching things off the bucket list and just getting things done, as opposed to going somewhere and really having an experience. And that's one thing I loved about our trip to South America, is that we only traveled, I think, maybe 7 or 8 countries while we were down there, which is still a lot. But, we had almost close to a month in every country outside of Uruguay, which we only spent a weekend. And that just gives you more of a chance to see the countries. And we met people who were spending, 3-4 months in one country. And they're like, I can't believe you're only spending a month in Argentina.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to realize like that travel is a means to some sort of ends for whoever. And sometimes you can consider travel as an end, like, oh, if I count these countries, then I'm succeeding at this travel thing. But you can't really succeed at traveling. Like it's just movement from geographic location to geographic location.
Yeah.
So for me, something that's important is, traveling, something that I've thought about is having volatility, not getting too comfortable anywhere. So I think in the past, I've been too focused on going, 4 days here, 4 days here, 5 days here. Like just, oh, we've done this, they check this, we've seen the tourist places, go on. Like I would like to have a more in-depth experience, but I still want to keep the volatility in there, because I think that's something that's really rewarding in traveling.
Yeah.
Is never getting too comfortable, always pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone.
For sure.
So I think when you're moving, some of the most stressful times traveling are the times moving from city to city.
Oh,
once
100%.
You show up in a town, get to the hostel, maybe unpack your bags, at the hostel you meet a few people, you've got this safety net.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely, the travel is the stressful part, like the actual travel, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's a good reason to keep moving. But my thing was, I was like, oh, maybe I could go from like Prague to Slovakia to Hungary to Slovenia. And I had definitely had this pull for the exotic too, because I was like, oh, Slovenia, that's cool. I don't know anyone who's been to Slovenia. Maybe I should go there. And I still think I might, because it like something intrigues me about like a small random country like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool when so many people are getting out and traveling now to, you know, have that country that people haven't been to and to be able to talk about that and share those experiences. In terms of people out there listening who are, you know, maybe thinking about a trip they want to take in 2015 or something that they want to plan, what sort of advice would you give them? It's like, I want to go somewhere, but I just am not really sure what that looks like.
Well, I think the first thing to consider is, like, I kind of talked about it before, but there's no perfect place. And there's a ton of places that'll do. Like, there's tons of cool opportunities all over the place. No matter where you go, like, there's cool adventures to be had, cool food to try, places to go. So, like, I think a big thing to consider is money.
Yeah,
like
money for sure.
Going to somewhere more second world, third world is a good way to extend your trip, which can give you some more value by having a longer trip. But
I think also what you value, like, what are you looking for out of a trip? Like, are you looking to meet a ton of people and, you know, see some cool clubs and do sort of the party thing? Are you looking to really get into nature? Are you looking to see something super historic? Are you looking to, like, because there's so many options in the world. Like, the options are endless, really. Are you looking to go to the Amazon in Peru or Ecuador or Brazil and see animals? Or are you wanting to volunteer and go to Africa and feel like you've made a difference on your trip? Or are you looking to go to a European country and see some history? And, you know, there's so many options. I think figuring out what you value, though, is really important.
Yeah, I think it's figuring out what your value is hard to do. Like, what you're being really, like, aware of what you're trying to get at. Because we've talked before about a lot about traveling is just getting away from your home. So if that's important to you, like, going anywhere is a success. But also, too, like, it's hard sometimes to identify things that are pushing you from external or internal. Like, the idea of, like, wanting to go to Machu Picchu, for example, just because you said it before. It's like, it's a cool place to have said you've been. But, like, do you really gain anything from going somewhere like that?
I mean, that's an interesting question. I think that anytime you push yourself somewhere new and you take a trip and you do something for yourself, I think that that's valuable. I mean, we've talked about Machu Picchu so many times because it's such an interesting attraction, because it just has so much, you know, so many people have Machu Picchu on their bucket list or something they want to do before they die. And any list you look at on the internet that's like top things to see or do in your life, Machu Picchu's on it. I've been twice. It is amazing. It's beautiful. But is it the place that I've grown the most as an individual, or, you know, one of the best memories that stands out in my mind? I mean, it's a good memory for sure. But is it the best? No, it's not.
And I'd say, like, a lot of people would completely dismiss the idea of going to, like, the top tourist places. Like, you go take a photo of yourself with the Eiffel Tower. Like, that's meaningless. A lot of people have that viewpoint on travel, that, like, you shouldn't be doing these top tours. And I definitely don't think that. Like, I think there's some value in going and collecting these destinations. Like, it's nice to have a photo of yourself with the Eiffel Tower. Like, you've collected that and you've brought it home with you.
Yeah.
Like, there's
a reason why it is so popular. Like, it's a really cool building.
But we do have this pull as humans, or maybe just in, like, our society, to collect things that we really can't collect. Like, to try to collect these destinations. That's why we try with photos. Before they tried with photos, they tried with paintings, other things. You're trying to collect these things. And they're not things to be collected, really.
No, they're not. So if somebody's listening right now and they're like, oh, well, I really wanted to go to Machu Picchu, like, would you tell them to rethink that decision, or would you encourage them to get out and go? What's sort of your viewpoint on that?
Well, so I would just think it's hard for me to identify with because I've never really been super motivated to go to one thing. Like, I want to go see this thing.
Never? With anything?
I'm just trying to think as I said that, because I'm like, I feel like I'm saying something that's not true.
Colosseum? You're pretty driven for the Colosseum, I think.
Yeah, a little bit.
You're definitely, I think that I'm more of the driving factor to see these like big name tourist destinations. I think that, you know, the point I really want to drive home is that if you're planning a trip or there's something you really want to do, I think that people should just get out there and do it. But it should be, make sure that you're doing it for yourself. Are you going to Machu Picchu because you're really interested in old ruins and you love hiking and you're interested in improving culture, improving food, and you want to maybe take a trip to the jungle after? Or are you doing it because you really want that photo with Machu Picchu?
But, and beyond that, I think Peru is a cool place. Going to Machu Picchu is a cool adventure.
Yeah.
Cool doesn't really mean anything, but like, you're going to have more of an adventure going to Machu Picchu than you are going to the Eiffel Tower. Like, that's for sure. And that'll be a good experience. And I don't think it's that dangerous necessarily to want to go to one specific location. I think there's more danger in the idea that you need to go do a whole bunch of stuff in your trip. So that's something I've thought about. And I think you thought about it a little bit, but a little bit differently, where you were like, oh, if I'm going to India, I've got to go to the Taj Mahal. I've got to do this other thing. And I was like, oh, if I go to Prague, you know, going to Prague, I could just stay in Prague for a month, learn the language. That'd be kind of cool. But I was like, but I could also go to like Slovakia, Hungary, Slovenia, Croatia. Maybe I could go to like Bosnia or something. Like, and I was like, wow, that'd be like 6 times better because it's 6 more countries.
What did you say the other day too? You're like, oh, maybe since I'm over there, I'll fly to Kenya. I was like, what are you talking about? You're going to be in the Czech Republic.
That was a joke.
That was not a joke.
That was a joke. But
that's the same sort of thought pattern. And we're by no means like, I think it's, you know, you see these photos that people are posting on your social media and you see all these amazing things out there and it just makes that drive. It's like, oh, I want to see more places. And Europe is a really easy place to get caught up in. I need to see more because everything is so damn close there.
Yeah.
It's
but
like,
I think
I'm like, for you, it's like, I'm in the Czech Republic. I might as well go to Slovakia.
Yeah. I think you have this, like, there's a pull to collect things, right? To think that collecting things is going to make you happier than it really actually does. So it's easy in the planning stages of a trip to kind of expand your horizons, to take this trip to one place and make it a trip to 3 to 4 to 5 places. And that can really diminish from your experience and getting the benefits out of it. So I just caution people, if you are planning a trip and you had this idea of going to Machu Picchu and now you're thinking about flying to Quito and going to somewhere else, or if you had a trip to go to France and now you're thinking, well, I've got to go to Spain, I've got to go to Barcelona, I've got to go to Morocco, I've got to go, not Morocco, Monaco. Yeah. But all these other places that you've now thought about, maybe consider what you really want, like what was driving you to want to go on the trip in the first place. Because what was driving me to go on the trip was to gain self-esteem in a way, to be confident in myself, to be by myself traveling the world. I wanted to learn the language, to gain some language learning skills and just have a sense of fulfillment. I didn't want to go traveling to knock more countries off my list. It's once I decided I wanted to go traveling for these other reasons that this thought about adding countries to my trip became alluring.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's kind of interesting, that trip that I took to Peru. I just went for 16 days and there was actually a guy from Calgary who was on the same flight down with me, and we were sitting beside each other on the flight over to Houston. And then we hung out in the airport, grabbed some lunch, found our gate. And my trip was very much Peru focused. It was very like slow, low key, lots of time in every different place, which is kind of unlike the way I tended to travel before then, because
like even really lots of time over 16 days isn't that much time.
Yeah, I know it's not, but I mean, 4 days in each place is pretty good. He, on the other hand, was having like a day in Lima, flying to Cusco to do Machu Picchu, flying from Cusco to Santiago, skiing in Santiago because it was winter at the time, flying to Buenos Aires, spending a few days in Buenos Aires, coming back, spending a few days in Lima and going home. And I was like, you're down in South America for 2 weeks and you're doing 3 countries? Like, that's absurd.
Yeah, and you go from being able to see a country to seeing a bunch of airports.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it was interesting because we had the same flight home, and just comparing our trips, it was, you know, we had very different experiences. And yes, he ticked off Chile and Argentina off of his list and got those stamps in his passport that I didn't have at the time. But I feel like in terms of our experience, I got a lot more out of my trip, and I learned more about Peru, and I really got to dig a little bit deeper into the one place that I was. And it's hard not to. Like, when he said he was going to all these places, I was like, ooh, I wish I was going to these places. Like, it's hard not to. But then I was like, oh, wait a minute. No, I'm like pretty excited for what I have planned. Like, this is going to be really cool. And it was. So I think it's really important not to get caught up in, you know, I've paid X amount of money for a flight here. Like, I might as well go to these other places too. Just remember, like, you do have time in your life to see those other places. And it's really important to really be present and full on in your experience that you're having. And there's no need to rush through that just to see other places. Because those places are going to be more meaningful if you spend more time in them.
Yeah, and you could even apply that to going back to places you've been before. I definitely didn't really want to consider going back to a place I've been before.
I think that
because I had this urge to see something new, but realistically, most of the places I've been, I haven't been for long enough for them not to be new.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because when you were talking about Spain, I was like, no, don't go to Spain. Like, we've already been to Spain. But it's, you know, we've been to some places in Spain, but we definitely have not been to every place in Spain. You can 100% have a month trip in Spain that's completely different from the last month we spent in Spain. Yeah,
because I was almost referring to cities. Like, I could go back to cities I've been to before and have new experiences. But yeah, when you're thinking about that on a country level, you can, like, there's tons of places we haven't been in, countries we've been to.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's another danger of counting countries and thinking of countries as some sort of travel entity that you go to and knock them off your list.
Yeah, and I think it's hard not to get caught up in that when you work full time and maybe you only get 2 or 3 weeks of vacation a year and you plan this big trip. It's like you want it to be, it seems like people either want it to be the same every year, like they go to the same resorts and do the same sort of vacation, or they want to do something completely different. Like, they want a travel experience that's completely different. It's like, well, I've been to Costa Rica. I'm not going to do Costa Rica again.
Yeah, it's where it's very one end or the other. There aren't many people who are like, oh yeah, I always go to Spain, but I always go somewhere different.
Maybe we should be those people.
Another thing I thought that came into my mind when I was planning my trip that I think is kind of a limiting thought, maybe a bit of like a cognitive bias.
Maybe.
I don't know. But it was about
that's the right term.
how I was thinking about learning a language, and I was like, oh, it'd be cool to go learn Czech initially, because I thought about learning Spanish, how just fulfilling it was to learn any language. And we met someone there who had done a lot of traveling, there being Buenos Aires and language school, who had done a lot of traveling just based off learning languages. Like, he'd gone to St. Petersburg, slowly losing the ability to speak, and learned Russian. He was going to Madrid to practice Spanish. I was like, that's cool. Like, you can get a cool experience just learning a bit of a language. But then I was considering, like, okay, I've spent 6 months learning Spanish. If I'm going to be going somewhere to practice a language, I should focus on Spanish.
Yeah.
And it's
hard too when you're not completely fluent either. It's like, oh, well, I could learn this new language and like maybe lose some of my Spanish, or I could make my Spanish better. You know, get to that really good point. Like, I definitely see that thought process.
But it's like I have this sunk cost in Spanish, and that's what's kind of drawing me to continue with it. But the whole thing about learning new stuff, learning new skills, is kind of, you do those things to expand your opportunities. So like, you learn Spanish as kind of this thing to expand your opportunities, to get to know people better, expand your skills. But then once you've invested time in it, it can become limiting because you can say, oh, I can only focus on Spanish.
Yeah.
Like, it's the same thing with getting a university degree. You go to university to expand your job opportunities, but then a lot of times people get out of university with a degree and now they won't consider any jobs outside of their degree. It's like you went to expand, but you really did is box yourself in.
Yeah, and I think that that's something important to consider. Like, as humans, we're meant to grow and develop, and as babies and kids, like, we're so curious. We want to learn. And a lot of that kind of, I guess, gets stomped out of us through schools. We're forced to learn things we don't want to learn. But we all have interests, and I think it's important, you know, if you're interested in languages and you're interested in growing and learning, like, learning any language in the world is going to be beneficial to you because you're learning something new.
Mm-hmm. So I think if you're considering planning a trip and you're maybe thinking about, I've done this in the past, so that should define my new trip, maybe that's something to reconsider. I'm trying to think of like other examples outside of language. I think language is a big one.
Yeah, I think, language is a big one. What else? Yeah, I think language is probably the biggest one. Even a lot of people, you know, being in Canada, it's like, oh, well, I speak French, so like I'm going to go to France so that the language barrier is not as much. It's like, well, you could go to Spain and like pick up some Spanish. Like, that'd be a cool experience too.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe like there's kind of this idea of progression in traveling, of going like more and more exotic places. Like, you backpack Europe, then you backpack South America, then you backpack Asia, then you got to go to Africa because it's like the next thing that's more risky, more intense, and thinking you can't go back. Like, maybe you've backpacked Europe when you were 18 and now you're 25 like me, and you don't want to go backpack Europe again. Why not? Like, you can have a cool experience there.
That resonates with me. I think that was a lot of my like drive. I was like, oh, India, like that, you know, I've done Europe, I've done Australia, New Zealand, I've done Southeast Asia, I've done South America, like India, Africa. Those are two sort of like progressive steps, I think, for me, in terms of traveling. But it's also okay to go back to Asia or to go back to, you know, Latin America or even to Europe. I think regardless of where you go or what you do, you're going to have a really cool experience. And like Ryan has said, it may not be perfect, but, you know, most places are going to be good enough for you to get an amazing travel experience.
Mm-hmm. So when people are planning a trip, usually there's some sort of like I flip that switches like, ooh, I should go traveling. And maybe you have some sort of vision of traveling. And then you start thinking about it, putting it through your like mind trash compactor or whatever. And you're like, oh, maybe I should do this. I could go here. I can like start looking at flights, and this thing becomes this expansive amount of options.
It's like a tumor.
Do you think
it starts small and just grows very rapidly.
And then hopefully you can bring it back in. But do you think there's value in just making snap travel decisions? Like, for me, I had this idea going to Prague, and then I took it to this massive extent of like, I could go anywhere in the world. I've got a month with nothing to do. Wow. Like, and then I was like frozen. I was like, I have no idea what to do. And I remember I went to a yoga class and I was lying there at the end. And it just kind of became, it sounds douchey to say, like it came to me, but I was just kind of thinking in that moment, like, I should just do with what I originally wanted to do. And so I came home that night, booked a flight, and I was like, okay, going. Yeah. But even booking a flight is kind of scary. Mm-hmm. Like, we talked about the risk involved at the start of this podcast, but do you think, because you went through that similar process where you started with one thing, kind of became aware of the options, and then you were like, whoa, I don't know what to do now, got lots of options.
I feel like I'm sort of like cutting it back down again. Yeah, that definitely resonates with me. I think that it's really important. I think meditation's great for just really imagining yourself in that situation to figure out what you truly want. But if you were spurred to make a decision based on something in your mind, that's probably what you want to do. And you've just let so many other things, like external factors, play in, and you should really just go with what you wanted. So if your idea is, oh, I want to go teach English in China, and then you've taken it to so many other levels, like, oh, well, if I'm going to travel, maybe I should go see Europe because I haven't done that. It's like, if teaching English in China is what spurred you to have this idea to go, you should probably just do that.
Yeah, you should have like instead of having this idea and then you considering all these options on even footing, and you're like, wow, I can't convince myself that any of these places are perfect because none of them are perfect. Or you're trying to reason out why one is the best or the perfect option and you can't find it. Maybe think about it as you had this idea. Now you need to find a place. So this idea is what you're going to do unless you find another option that is like definitely 100% better.
Yeah.
And if you can't find that, then you just stick with what you're doing. So before you go into the decision, don't think about, there's 100 different horses in this race and any of them can win and you've got to keep track of which one's in the lead because that's overwhelming and confusing. Think of, you're going to do this unless you have a maybe fixed time of like, I'm going to research for 3 weeks. And if I haven't found something better in 3 weeks, I'm just going to do what I initially thought.
Yeah, I think that's great. Just go with your instinct. Like deep down, I feel like deep down, we all know what we want. It's just really hard to dig at that. And sometimes it's really difficult to stay in touch with that because there's so much, like we're exposed to so many external things on a day-to-day basis that influence our decision-making and influence the way we think and what we think we want. I think it's really important to go with your gut though. I've heard so much and read so much about how your gut, like it's really important to listen to it because 99% of the time it's driving you in the right direction. So go with your gut.
Yeah. And even for travel, like a lot of the reasons you might be reading a book or something and they're talking about some nifty place and you're like, ooh, that like, it's exciting thinking about going there. So maybe it's like a dumb reason. Like maybe you want to go to Hungary because like you saw it in Iron Man and it looks cool. And your gut's like, yes. And then you're thinking about it. You're like, well, that's not really a good reason to travel places, but like maybe that's a good situation where you just
do it. Just do it. Book a flight. Let Ryan be your inspiration. Hopefully I'll be your inspiration soon to follow.
Yeah. Got to convince Amanda to book a flight.
I'm feeling inspired by this podcast, just talking about it.
Okay.
Anything else you want to touch on before we say adios?
No.
All right. Check out our website at www.theworldwanders.com. Shoot us an email at theworldwanderspodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.